In every scene where Taehyung and Jungkook aren't standing next to each other, Jungkook's behavior becomes clear. He watches him, follows him with his eyes, searches for him with his body. No matter who's nearby, his attention goes straight to Taehyung. While Jimin is very close to Jungkook, he shows no visible interest in that direction. Instead, he turns the camera and focuses it directly on Taehyung. These kinds of actions can't be seen as coincidence if they're repeated so many times. The bond between Jungkook and Taehyung needs no words or explanations. Their gestures don't seem planned. When they understand each other with just a glance or when they react so clearly to being close, it's clear that what exists between them isn't faked or constructed for the camera. The simple fact that Jungkook smiles that way only when Taehyung is nearby is a very clear indication that their closeness has a direct impact on his emotional state. Taehyung, for his part, also responds without thinking. He approaches Jungkook as if it's the most normal thing, as if he knows this is his place. The way they behave around each other doesn't change even when there are other people around, even when there are cameras or important events. That makes everything seem even more real. They don't stop to think about who's watching them, because their way of being together is part of their everyday life. Watching Taehyung and Jungkook share a space like the gym isn't just about working out together. What truly stands out is how that place becomes a constant display of closeness, mutual care, and synchronicity. They walk together, train side by side, synchronizing as if they know each other's every move. There's no need for words because their body language speaks volumes. The way they look at each other before starting a routine, how they time themselves together, how one waits for the other before starting. It's all a natural choreography that speaks for itself. Despite the negative comments or posts that try to separate them or diminish their bond, Taehyung and Jungkook respond with actions. They don't post statements or argue on social media. They simply show themselves as they are, united. And that kind of response, silent but powerful, is the strongest. They don't train like two different people who only happen to be in the same place. They accompany each other as if the other were part of their balance. The gym becomes another place where they strengthen their bond, not with grand declarations, but with everyday, real gestures. When one focuses on lifting weights, the other watches closely. When they take breaks, they do so in sync. The criticism may continue, but as long as they continue walking together, training with that natural ease, showing that mutual attention, what they are building goes beyond what anyone can invent. They don't need to defend themselves. Every encounter is a direct response to the rumors. Every moment they move as one is a silent affirmation of what they truly share. A simple conversation, which might have gone unnoticed by others, becomes a special scene when Jungkook and Taehyung share it. The phrase "send me the money" changes tone when Taehyung turns it into "do you want my bank information?" And Jungkook responds with a laugh that isn't just for fun. What seemed like a normal conversation actually shows how their relationship is expressed even in the most mundane of situations. The laughter, the eye contact, and the ease with which they speak make it clear that there is an understanding that goes beyond words. In this interaction, there is no need for physical contact to see the trust and connection. What's interesting is how such a common situation transforms into something intimate. If an outsider observes the scene, they might think it's just humor. But those who pay attention to their full story notice a special energy surrounding their gestures, their tones of voice, and the synchronicity of their reactions. Shared laughter isn't just a funny response, it's a sign that they share memories, inside jokes, moments that only they understand. This is also noticeable when they react at the same time, when they make eye contact without saying anything, or when they laugh at something that doesn't make much sense to others. This only happens when two people know each other so well that they don't need explanations. Instead of saying "I love you" directly, they communicate with everyday phrases that, in context, mean much more. A single scene doesn't define a relationship. But when gestures are repeated, when behaviors are maintained regardless of the place or situation, a silent truth is built. Body language speaks louder than words. Jungkook isn't forced. His interest is direct and undistracted. He doesn't turn the camera toward Jimin. He doesn't search for him with his eyes. He doesn't react with joy to his presence. Instead, every small movement he makes when he sees Taehyung is a sincere reaction that needs no explanation. He looks at him and smiles. He films him and relaxes. He approaches him and doesn't avoid contact. This is how a real bond is built, one that doesn't depend on an act or a strategy. When two people have to think about every gesture they make, it shows. But when they act comfortably, without worrying about who's watching, they are showing a connection that is part of their routine. That routine has been evident between Jungkook and Taehyung for years. They are used to touching, to being together, to sharing long, sincere glances. It's something that has become part of their way of being. That's why, no matter how much they try to separate them, each time they do, one seeks the other. And that search isn't out of empty habit, it's because they need to be close. What happens between Taehyung and Jungkook isn't simple closeness. It's a constant. It repeats itself so many times, in so many events, with so many witnesses, that it ceases to be spontaneous. When something repeats itself under the same conditions and produces the same reactions, that's called a pattern. And in this case, the pattern is based on the obvious attraction between them. An attraction that cannot be denied, even if there are those who insist on minimizing it or diverting attention. Taehyung and Jungkook don't need to express with words what they already show with their gestures. Their relationship is based on signals that, although seemingly simple, are loaded with intention. From the moment they enter the gym together, they are already saying something important: they are together. And not because it's an obligation or a publicity stunt, but because they choose to be. Many may interpret their closeness as a game or a strategy, but what is truly evident is something very different. The way they look at each other is not that of people acting, but of two people sharing an authentic connection. When one speaks, the other truly listens. When one gets closer, the other responds immediately, without hesitation. These small actions form a network of constant signals that need no explanation. Physicality also plays a very clear role. It's not just that they train close together, it's that their bodies react naturally to each other. Their postures, their movements, their pauses, everything is aligned. Sometimes, a glance is enough for both of them to know what's coming next. This wordless communication isn't born by chance, but from a deep mutual understanding. It's not something that's built overnight, especially if there's no strong foundation behind it. The way they touch each other is also key. It's not an accidental brush or a pose for the camera. It's the confidence with which they approach each other, the gentleness with which they touch each other, the firmness with which they stay together even when they know they're being watched. They don't seek to hide or exaggerate, they simply show themselves as they are. That tranquility, that determination to be real, says more than any official statement. The bond between Jungkook and Taehyung has changed over the years, but it hasn't disappeared. It's grown. What used to be small, occasional moments are now repeated more frequently and without the need to hide. They're no longer avoiding the cameras. They're no longer avoiding questions. They simply live their connection without fear. In the past, many of their interactions seemed brief, fleeting, or as if they were measuring their every move. But now, every time they share a screen, it's clear they feel no pressure to act differently. If Taehyung throws a provocative line at Jungkook, he does so without thinking about whether it will be recorded. And if Jungkook laughs naturally, he does so because he's not faking it. What we see isn't a strategy or prepared content. It's the result of a relationship that is no longer hidden. This isn't about theories. It's about observing how they react to each other. How spontaneous moments, like a conversation about money, become clear signs of their trust. Their body language is what stands out the most, the way they look directly at each other, how they don't avoid eye contact, how their responses are immediate. They don't need to explain. They no longer need to justify what they do or how they do it. These scenes also show a level of closeness that doesn't depend on context. They don't need to be alone or at important events to connect. They do it in casual transmissions, in simple interactions, or even in comments that others might miss. For those who follow their story, each of these details accumulates and becomes part of a larger narrative, a relationship that not only exists, but grows stronger without having to be explained. The fact that they don't back away when something intimate is mentioned, or that they don't change the subject when a double entendre comes up, speaks of security. There's no intention of erasing what's evident. They're not avoiding the signs. On the contrary, it seems they've reached a point where letting their feelings be known has become part of their daily routine. A routine that doesn't require public declarations, but is built with real actions.